Steve Biko once said, "The greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed." I repeat, Steve Biko once said, "The greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed." Beacon of light at the Derringdo Lighthouse. Mind is your power looking into eternity. Your transformation is always in progress. Today's topic is 9 values that African nations must adopt to become free from white oppression. 9 values African nations must adopt to become free from white oppression. Change your mindset. Change your behaviors. Heal yourself. Change your situations. If you don't change your mindset, if you don't change your behaviors, you cannot heal yourself and you cannot change your situations. Facts. Let's dive right into it. So, I'll be sharing this. I'll be reading from this document that I wrote. I typed it up today. I just wanted to share with you. All right, I'll just bring it closer so you can see what we're going to talk about today. All right. 9 values African nations must adopt to become free from white oppression. Number 1, African nations must unite. If there has never been a time in history that Africans must unite all over the world, it is no other than right now, in this 21st century and beyond. I don't care how we do it. I don't care if we like it. I don't care if we can trust the process of our unification. We must unite. Period. We must. African people on this planet have no friends. So what does that tell you? That we must become our best friends, or else continue the situations that the white man has given you, which has plagued us as a people, sent us backwards as a people, made us become dependent as a people. It has also made us become spiritually and psychologically impoverished. We must unite as a people. Number 2, African nations must stop depending on foreign aid from the IMF and other world banks. Let me repeat that again. Number 2, African nations must stop depending on foreign aid from IMF and other world banks. No sovereign nation that has ever risen to prominence and become powerful has ever relied upon their enemies in order for them to sustain their sovereignty. It just never adds up. The equation itself is imbalanced. You cannot depend on the enemy to sustain yourself. You cannot depend on the enemy to develop your country or countries or nations. That's backward thinking. And until African nations seriously begin to think and reach internally, we will never come out of white oppression. Because what the IMF and other world banks do is this: they keep us indebted forever. Let me say that again. What the IMF and other world banks do to us African people, African nations, is to keep us indebted forever. Read my lips, forever. That must change. We need to reach within our own nations. We have everything. We have natural resources. We have even human resources. If we unite, come together, pull our monies together, we will become a superpower in less than 100 years. I guarantee it. That's number 2. Number 3, African nations must develop a stronger or strongest military, counterintuitive intelligence agencies, and an incorruptible political system. Let me say that again. African nations must develop a stronger or strongest military, counterintuitive intelligence agencies, and an incorruptible political system. I have never seen any nation on the planet that can sustain itself or its sovereignty without having all 3 of these things I just mentioned intact. Because if you don't have it, your enemies can conquer you. If you don't have a strong, incorruptible political system, what happens in that nation or nations, wherever those type of systems are prevalent? They crumble. Corruption becomes prevalent. People start becoming disorderly, and there will be no justice. When you don't have an intelligence agencies like the CIA in the United States, the Interpol in United Kingdom, how can you know when the enemy is coming? How can you spy on other nations who mean you harm? You see, these are the things we need. If we do not invent these things or establish these institutions and military industrial complex of our own, an African-centered one, guess what? The enemy or enemies will have an upper hand every single time. So that's number 3. Number 4, African nations must resurrect our ancient African spiritualities. Can I say that again? African nations must resurrect our ancient African spiritualities. And if we don't know how to go back to them, or if we don't know how to practice them or experiment with them, we can learn how to. There are people right now as I speak who know the Yoruba's tradition. There are people living currently today in this right now who knows the ancient practices or know-hows or knowledge of the Igbo tribes. There are people right now in this present time and date and moment in time, the age that we live in, who knows something about other traditions, customs, ancient ones that we've left behind because we were what? Colonized by the white man. We need to go back. We need to what? Sankofa. Back to who we truly are. We cannot become anything great if we are disoriented, if we are lost, if we don't know ourselves, which was written long time ago on the walls of the ancient Kemet temples and spiritual centers. Why are we afraid of our heritage? Why are we afraid of our identity as African people? We've become more European than the Europeans. We've become more French than the Frenchmen. We're becoming more Asian than the Asians. Very soon, that's coming. If we're not careful, we might be recolonized again. So we must resurrect our ancient African spiritualities for us to become our greatest versions again. We cannot continuously adopt and play victim when we ourselves are not doing what we need to do for our best interests. So that was 4. Number 5. African nations must restructure their current African governments, institutions, and constitutions. African nations must restructure their current African governments, institutions, and constitutions. You know why? Because everything we have right now, we adopted from the Europeans. Every system of government or institution or constitution, we are continuously practicing our former and present colonial masters. Yes, we are still practicing them. All the imperialistic occupations that Europeans brought into Africa, we have not let them go yet. We are still furthering those practices in some shape or form, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. They are still prevalent in Africa, and that's why Africa is where we are today. Just because in some parts of Africa we have erected buildings everywhere and skyscrapers doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we are free. Just because we have erected skyscrapers and tall buildings everywhere does not mean that we are free. If our own people, our own citizens, our own brothers and sisters are running to Europe, Asia, and America, and South America, and other parts of the world, and they cannot live in their own parent country in Africa, what does that tell you? That we don't trust our system, we don't trust our government, and we sure don't trust our constitutions. That's why we run to Europe, Asia, and North America, or even South America. So that must change. Number 6, African nations must develop better African-centered schools of thoughts, knowledge, wisdom, and uprightness. I have to repeat this. African nations must develop better African-centered schools of thought, knowledge, wisdom, and uprightness. You know why? Because the current educational system is not doing that. Simple. The current educational system in Africa is doing the opposite of what I want us as African nations or as a people to develop or enhance or adopt. That's all. Number 7. African nations must create jobs and allow entrepreneurship agencies to exist. African nations must create jobs and allow entrepreneurship agencies to exist in African nations. We cannot starve our people to death. We cannot become great if our people are running away from places, African nations, where we're supposed to be rebuilding and making great again. The reason why Africans are being disrespected in Europe right now, today, every single moment of their lives is because they have no respect for us Africans. The reason why Africans are being disrespected, are being pushed back, are being told, guess what, you can't stand in the same line as a white man, is because, simply because they have no respect for us as a people. They don't even see us as human. Until we start seeing ourselves, our own brothers and sisters, as one family, and we work together, and we create things for each other, and we support each other, guess what? We will continue to run to Europe, Asia, and North America for greener pastures that we could actually invent, create in the motherland. Number 8. African nations must fund and have a well-managed system for infrastructure development. Let me say that again. African nations must fund and have a well-managed infrastructure development system in African nations. No electricity, no good roads, no good water supply. How can a nation survive? Infrastructure is very important. I don't need to even tell you that. Very important. If we don't know how to do it, which I am very 100% certain we do know how to do. We have engineers, we have scientists, we have people who have built nations in other nations. What are you talking about? We have it. We have brilliant minds all over the world. Nigeria, the most populous country on the planet. Why can't you ask your greatest Nigerian scientists, engineers, great think tanks all over the world, come back home. We'll give you a place to build a home. We'll even give it to you for free so you can teach our people. So you can teach our people. So you can teach our people what you now have acquired. Why can't we do that? Why can't Ghanaians ask their Ghanaian citizens all over the world, scientists, engineers, mechanics, tech gurus, come back home. We'll give you incentives, a place to live. You'll live comfortably. Teach our people so that we can rise again and become great again. Infrastructure development is number one, is key. No nation can survive in this present time and age without it. We need it. Number 9, and the final one. 9 values African nations must adopt to become free from white oppression. Number 9. African people, African nations must become fond of putting ourselves first. African nations, African peoples, we must become fond of putting ourselves first. We saw what happened in Ukraine recently, which always happens anywhere African people, black people go on the planet. We are always last on the bus. We're always last on the train. We're always last to get information. We're always last to receive anything good. We are always last, pushed aside, go to the back. We are never seen as equal. We are never seen as intelligent. We are always seen as a threat. What does that tell you? That tells you that it is time. It is time for us to change the paradigm. It is time for us to start befriending and loving ourselves, putting ourselves first. And this concludes 9 values that African nations must adopt to become free from white oppression. If we seriously, honestly, and practically adopt these 9 values, I sincerely believe that we will become free from white oppression. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. Please share, like, and subscribe. Until next time, beacon of light at the Derringdo Lighthouse. Your mind is your power. Look into eternity and be unapologetically Pan-African. Peace and one love.